I mean, I don't think I want to be normal. I feel things with a depth and weight that I don't think most people go through life experiencing, and I would not trade that for the world. I had a pretty colorful childhood. My parents had a lot of parties. There would be a lot of drinking. There would be a lot of music. I had this like weird dual existence of like being well off and I was diving, so I was, you know, going to the pool in the morning and then going to private school, and studies were important, and like achieving was important. And then at the same time I had, you know, this kind of other side, which was my parents partying and exposure to people coming off of drugs, like being dope sick on the couch. And as a little girl, me asking my mom what's wrong with him, and my mom saying, oh, he's just coming off of heroin. We moved to Florida, and that was really hard for me because the coach that I wanted to practice with was in Vancouver, and diving had been my entire life. So when we moved to Florida, I lost my identity, essentially. I think that's when I started to like actually feel empty. Like my first experiences with kind of something was missing. I didn't understand the point. I didn't know what I was here for anymore. We moved to Tampa. I ended up going to a private school. So that was grade 10. At that private school, there was kind of a suicide epidemic that was going on. So I think 3 people had killed themselves within the year, and I didn't know them, but it was at that time that I also started to experience a lot of sadness and emotional ups and downs. When I was 15, I decided I wanted to try drinking. I was so scared of it, like terrified. And so my mom actually taught me. My boyfriend, who I ended up staying with all through high school and the beginning of university, and he was a drug dealer, and he introduced me to drugs. I feel like the mental health stuff was always there, but I kind of masked it with overachieving, essentially. So when the diving fell away, I went from being absolutely terrified of trying drugs to asking this boy out to the winter formal, and at dinner he looked at me and said, "Do you want to try acid?" And I was like, yes. Something shifted. And I started experimenting with substances. Very quickly, the drugs would not work for me. So I was the person who was doing ecstasy at the club and crying on the floor in the corner. I had a drink. I think like the next thing I did was smoke pot once, then I did acid, and then I did ecstasy, like all within a month. And then 3 months later, I was at a psychiatrist. That was my first diagnosis. Was bipolar disorder. For the next, I don't know how many years, I was on every different medication under the sun. Like I wasn't raised to feel shame or anything like that. So I was really open about it. I was open about it at school. I'd finished a year and a half of university by the time I was 17, and I was living with my first boyfriend, kind of playing house with a mood disorder, and had no idea what was going on. So I kind of left my house, moved in with him, was on the diving team at Florida State, trying to do both diving and still do well in school and live with my boyfriend. He was still a drug dealer. I started to have panic attacks. Like my mood was very unstable and was becoming like, I think, a burden on him. It was just, I was a lot to deal with. I basically ended up having a nervous breakdown, and my mom came and picked me up from school, and they brought me up to Toronto, and I was admitted to CAMH, and that was my first hospitalization. Everything would be good, and then medication would stop working, or there would be a life event that I couldn't deal with, and I would end up back in hospital. So 10 years were punctuated in and out of mental institutions. I came back to Toronto after school, after university, and I was living here for about 6 months. I went out to Los Angeles. I met a bunch of people and came back, and then this music producer convinced me 2 weeks later to just drive out to California, and so I did. And then I was a professional nanny to this 5-month-old girl for the next year and a half, and it was probably the happiest time of my life. Yeah, so actually when I was a nanny, I did not take any medication. That was, I think it was the longest time in my life that I was not medicated. We got married in Vegas. It was an omen. We were married for 11 very long months. He became really abusive, like right after we got married, and I ended up leaving him. There's a lot of extreme behavior, so like changing my look, like chopping my hair, shaving my head, you know, starting to tattoo, being a party girl at night, but kind of still holding it together with work. I've always had a good work ethic, so there's always been like that line of me kind of holding it together while I'm falling apart. And so I ended up coming back and putting myself in the hospital again. Mm-hmm. When you're young, it's like you're the girl with like bipolar disorder, and you're an artist, and you have youth on your side, so it's like kind of sexy, and like, you know, guys like that. They want to date the crazy girl, whereas like you're over 30 and like it's less attractive. So your friends are growing up and they start to see you as being, you know, unstable, and they're settling down and having kids, and I'm still kind of all over the place. I found dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a combination of mindfulness, emotion regulation, distress tolerance. It basically taught me all of the skills that I didn't learn growing up. The mindfulness like had a huge, like I was drawn to that immediately. I immediately felt a sense of relief with that, and then I started to pursue, that's when I started yoga teachers training and going on mindfulness meditation retreat. Mindfulness, or like having that practice when I'm practicing it, is incredibly helpful. Like I love cleaning my apartment. It's like very soothing to me when everything around here is in order. I feel like my brain is in better order. Having lots of plants that I care for would definitely be something. My dogs, so just like finding things to love and things that soothe me, which I can't think of anything better than my dogs. They're just like absolute unconditional love, and they are amazing because they're these living things that depend on me and, you know, keep me going in like my darkest moments. And they're really good at getting me outside when I don't want to go outside. So like taking them for walks, kind of finding things to latch onto that'll get you through like the times when you're not really feeling it. Like everything is good. I just got a great new job. You know, financially I'm doing fine. Like all the things are there that I should be happy. There's like a low level of like depression where you're not down in the dumps, where you're like just wondering why you can't enjoy the things in life. Like, and I kind of feel like that's where I am right now. Like I just bought a new car and I should be super excited about it, and like I might get it for like a second, like that I enjoy it, and then I just go back to feeling kind of what's the point. There is kind of this like underlying baseline of an extended existential crisis, you know, where you just don't understand the point. I've been open at 2 places that I've worked about my mental health, and I've gotten fired. I think there's like, we've got a long way to go. You know, I'm on medication that's stable now. I have been for years, so that's super helpful. Like, yes, finally nailed that. Like where I am right now is like really trying to tune into my own intuition and like believing, like trusting myself, which is not something that I think you're taught as someone who's like got mental illness, to trust yourself because you've got this brain that's like sometimes misbehaving on you. But like ultimately, like I do know what's best for me. Like I am a strong person who's come out the other side of like so many different things. So that's kind of where I am right now. I try to talk to people openly about this stuff so that they feel they can talk about it and not feel ashamed. Ultimately, life is really good. I actually really love life. I want to experience everything. I like the way I am. Like I don't have a problem with my mental health at all. Ultimately, it's a gift. For however high the pendulum can swing one way, it gets to go that amount the other way. When I'm really connected to things, the deep sense of joy that I get to experience from having experienced those really low lows, it's awesome.